نؤمن في مؤسسة عبد الحميد شومان بأهمية الابتكار والإبداع في تلبية احتياجاتنا وإيجاد حلول عملية للتحديات التي تواجهها مجتمعاتنا. ارتأت المؤسسة إطلاق جائزة عبد الحميد شومان للابتكار بشقيها العلمي والمجتمعي، والتي تركز على الحقول التالية: التكنولوجيا الخضراء والاستدامة البيئية، الأمن الغذائي والتكنولوجيا الزراعية، الرعاية الصحية والتكنولوجيا الطبية، سوق العمل وحلول الإنتاجية الاقتصادية، وحلول تعلمية. وسيكون باب التقدم للجائزة مفتوحاً اعتباراً من العام 2018 وبموازنة تصل لغاية $1,000,000 أردني.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our panelists. Senior Advisor on Reconstruction, Office of the Vice President, Middle East and North African Region, MENA, World Bank, Abdullah Al-Dardari. Regional Environmental Center, Hungary, Mikhail Domovsky. Author, founder, and former CEO of Women for Women International, Zainab Selbi. Professor of National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies, Principal Fellow, Japan, Science and Technology Agency, Tachio Arimoto. And our moderator is journalist, BBC News UK, Tim Wilcox.
Good morning, everyone. It's very much, I think, quality, not quantity at the moment, but I'm hoping more people will join us in the next few minutes. It's a pleasure to be here for the World Science Forum. Today's plenary, Rebuilding Broken Societies Through Reconstruction and Recovery. I work for the BBC. I'm a presenter and correspondent for them, and I've worked for them for, I suppose, 14, 15 years. Before that, ITN. And as a reporter, I've covered many disasters and conflicts, from the genocide in Rwanda to wars, civil wars, including those in Iraq, Ukraine, Libya, much of the Arab Spring as well. There have been earthquakes, unfortunately, as well, floods, tsunamis, as well as the apocalyptic Japanese tsunami and Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines. And the thoughts that always go through my mind, whether it's a war zone, a disaster zone, as I look around the scenes of absolute shattered lives and devastation, is not only how quickly can all this physically disrupted landscape be physically reconstructed, but also how long will it take to rebuild people, their society, to recreate the culture and sense of normality in a population that has been smashed and traumatized. The two areas of recovery obviously go hand in hand. The Marshall Plan after the Second World War was perceived to be a success, so too the MacArthur scheme in Japan. But what are we doing now that is different and more successful than we were 70 years ago? What role does science today play in that expansion, that explosion of knowledge with the internet, the deluge of scientific apps benefiting mankind as it struggles to emerge from war and disaster to try and find some sense of normality. One of the longest queues, actually, when I was covering Typhoon Haiyan in that benighted island of Tacloban, where everything was devastated, one of the longest queues was a generator point set up by the UN so people could charge their mobile phones so that they could communicate with family and friends, check their emails, and actually talk to the outside world. So conflict, disaster, natural, man-made, environmental, remains the greatest challenge for all of us. Devastation of livelihood, loss of life, property, and health. The cumulative effect of conflict has hindered economic prosperity, as we know, in so many countries. So how is science helping them? Educating, building, and eradicating poverty. The task is huge. 1 million children in Syria have not been educated for the past few years. This is a breeding ground for fundamentalist groups, as we know. With us today, a very well-qualified panel to talk through some of these issues. Just before I introduce them again, I very much want this to be an interactive session, so we're going to hear from our speakers, then a question from me, maybe a question from you, and then at the end, I really would like to spend 25 minutes or so hearing from all of you in the audience. So please do participate in that. Let's start with our first speaker, who is Abdullah Al-Dardari, World Bank Senior Advisor on Reconstruction for the Middle East and the North Africa region. Abdullah, if I could hand over to you.
Thank you. Clearly, reconstruction in the region will not be and should not be business as usual. The level of destruction, the massive displacement of millions of people, the collapse of social contracts, and the total unraveling of social capital in some of the countries in the region calls for a dramatic and different approach to rebuilding. The question is, do we want to rebuild what existed before the big explosion, or should we imagine and plan and set the scene for something different? Just take some economic numbers. The maximum growth in total factor productivity, which is the main manifestation of the level of knowledge and technology in any economy before the conflict, can only generate growth in TFP in the next 15 years of maximum 5%. That increase in TFP by 5% can hardly change the growth levels and change the quality of jobs in the regional economies to satisfy the demands of Arab youth who went to the streets and who are still demanding participation and higher and better jobs and dignity. Reconstruction in the old style of rebuilding physical assets will not work. We just produced a study in the World Bank saying that, take Syria, for example, 90% of the total damage to the Syrian economy is attributed to the collapse in economic organization and social networks, not to the physical damage that happened in the country, despite the enormity of that physical damage. And therefore, trying to rebuild physical structures without taking care of trying to rebuild social networks and a comprehensive and new social contract, it won't work. From a technical point of view, it has become clear also that using the same technology levels in the Arab economies of pre-Arab Spring will not be able to achieve the necessary creation of wealth, incomes, livelihoods, and jobs that the Arab region deserves and requires to achieve stability and prosperity. Just to give you another example, in the housing sector alone, in Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and Libya, the damage requires around 50 million tons of cement every year for the next 10 to 15 years to rebuild the destroyed homes. Those 50 million tons every year require more than 2 billion cubic meters of water to mix them and make concrete out of them. We don't have in the region a surplus of 2 billion cubic meters of water to mix with cement that will be imported from outside the region with all the consequences that you can imagine on the balance of payment and the foreign currency reserve, and therefore on inflation and so on and so forth. New construction technologies and new technologies in rebuilding materials is necessary if we want to see people going back home in their countries and living in their houses and become productive again. In addition to that, to go back to the same economic structures of the pre-Arab Spring, as I said before, will not be sufficient to create the growth that's expected. What I'm trying to say is that orthodox economics won't work post-conflict and in reconstruction. What we are talking about is some sort of heterodox economics. What we are talking about is not reconstruction in the physical sense. We are talking about transformation. The region needs a paradigm shift in governance, a paradigm shift in economic theory, and a paradigm shift in institutions, but most importantly, a paradigm shift in the technological component of Arab economies. And without that dramatic change, we don't see how could reconstruction happen and how could we achieve the types of jobs that Arab youth is aspiring for. There is a lot of talk these days that Arab youth will be the construction workers who will rebuild all these destroyed physical assets. Is this what we want for our youth? To constrain their aspirations to be construction workers with all, of course, the respect of a construction worker? What we want to see is a contested market system and a contested political systems that allows transformation and that allows young men and women to take technology into their hands and start creating, start innovating, start creating knowledge. At the moment, knowledge production in our region is negligible and doesn't contribute to economic growth. Whether we were rich or poor, all of our countries suffer from the same structural problem. Very narrow production base with very limited value added because there is very limited knowledge participation in that economy. So it's a transformation that is based on contested political economy and new levels of technology rather than reconstruction in the old way. That's one. That transformation cannot happen in the narrow borders of each country in the region. It can only happen in the wider Middle East and North Africa. It can only happen with regional integration. Just to give you an example, even the largest economy in the region, that is Saudi Arabia, is too small to justify the investments required in research and development that could make a dramatic change in the economic productivity in that country. Therefore, only through regional cooperation and only through probably thinking of a new regional developmental identity that the region can move forward in its transformation and not wait for narrow, restricted markets. We need economies of scale, and we need creativity across the region. So regional integration is the second condition. But just as much as knowledge today is global and it spans across humanity, rebuilding peace and prosperity in our region is a global public good. Therefore, there is no rebuilding and transformation in the region without complete cooperation and openness with the rest of the world, and for the rest of the world to work closely with our region. Knowledge sharing should be without boundaries and should be accessible to all of us. So these are the three main conditions that we in the World Bank believe should be the basis of transformation, regional cooperation, and international sharing of knowledge to ensure the very important global public good that is prosperity and peace in our region. All of that depends on massive change in the level of knowledge in our region, and I hope that this conference in the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan specifically could be a launching pad for this new thinking about reconstruction. Thank you.
Abdullah, thank you very much. Just before we move on, do you have any optimism at all that the region, the MENA region, is able to leapfrog ahead and actually be the driver for new technology? Because surely without the political will there and the political agreement among countries in the region, that is going to be impossible.
That's true. The political will is essential, but I think if we present those regional value chains and those benefits in the logical way, there is a big chance. Take, for example, with the high tensions today in the Gulf, Qatari gas still flows to the United Arab Emirates. With the great political tensions between Algeria and Morocco, Algerian gas still flows to Morocco and through Morocco to Europe. So when regional interests, common interests, are well presented and well designed, there are tremendous opportunities to overcome political narrow and short-term differences for wider social and economic benefits.
Okay, any questions just for Abdullah before we move on? So, do you want to take this microphone here?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, sir, for your talk. Actually, I think before we are talking about rebuilding societies, we should shed light that Arab world depends on transport or exportation to eat, to wear, everything. Like, we don't have the basics for like the life. We just export. So I believe before we talk about knowledge transfer, we should like focus on farming at the beginning to eat. Then we can talk about knowledge transfer and rebuilding our societies. Thank you.
Can you imagine farming that's sufficient for all of us without massive improvement in technology, in agriculture, and in water management? Technology is not a separate sector. Technology is the way we think and the way we process everything, from management of our political systems to managing our academia. Technology is essential for how we use our very limited water resources. Technology is essential on how we use our very limited agricultural activities. Technology is very important in, for example, leapfrogging our educational system. I don't think in a country like Iraq or Syria or Yemen now, we can wait until we rebuild the 7,000 schools destroyed in Syria to reinstate the educational system. We have to think of a different, maybe completely mobile and digitized educational system and move forward very quickly. It is not a choice, it's a necessity to introduce knowledge into our economies and our societies. Now, not tomorrow.
Abdullah, I'm just going to take one more. There was a gentleman over there. And then we'll move on.
Thank you. You're speaking about sharing knowledge, and I'm sure that you're right there. But a lot of the knowledge we're talking about is in the hands of the Googles of this world and the Syngentas and these sorts of companies, and their interest is probably not the same as yours. So how can we progress on that one?
I am not a science specialist, but I can tell you one thing. If we in the World Bank believe that this is the way forward, we can and we should initiate a global dialogue, and we will initiate a global dialogue on this issue. As I said before, peace and stability in our region is a global public good. Europe understands today what does it mean to have people, millions of people on the move, moving towards Europe. Europe is fully aware that the next climate change crisis, let alone the political crisis, the next climate change crisis in our region will lead to millions of people moving to Europe one way or another. Therefore, investing and sharing knowledge to enhance this region's ability to sustain its people and provide them with decent jobs and high levels of incomes has become a necessity that requires the Googles and the Syngentas and the others to rethink their monopoly over the sources of knowledge.
Okay, look, I'm going to leave Abdullah Dadari there, but just collect your thoughts if you want to come back to his presentation at the end of when we've had the rest of the panel. I'd like to introduce you now to Mikhail Dymovsky, Executive Director, Regional Environmental Center for Central and Eastern Europe, who has a wealth of knowledge of rebuilding the former Yugoslavia, dealing with the problems, the continuing conflict in Ukraine and in the Donbass region. Mikhail.
Thank you, Tim. Good morning. My name is Mikhail Dymovsky. I'm the Executive Director of the Regional Environmental Center. We are an international organization which was established a long time ago, in early 1990, by the government of Hungary, the United States, and the European Commission. Nowadays, we have 32 signatory countries part of our charter, the treaty, and our operations are mostly in Central and Eastern Europe, the Eastern Partnership countries, former Soviet Union, but also we have operations in the MENA region and also some progress in the Caribbean. The REC was instrumental in setting up a program that was designed to build in societies after the atrocities and the wars in the Balkans. We have been, in that time, in discussion with the Commission, designing a program that would not only rebuild the environmental infrastructure, but would rather rebuild the facilities, but would build the societies, but also would work together with the governments into regional cooperation towards a common vision. You know, after the conflict, after the atrocities, not only the infrastructure is affected, but also the administrations, but also the societies. What we have done is to bring in environment. When I say environment, it means also energy, water management, climate change, as an entry point for building a stability instrument. The environment normally was not primarily a priority for the countries immediately after the conflict. But however, we have used the environmental protection as an entry point and as a politically neutral platform to put the countries sitting on the same table. The regional environmental reconstruction program has ended up with being an evolving mechanism that is still existing, but still the countries are now moving towards the European Union. The main elements of bringing in the stability is the regional cooperation. The countries, after the stability and the war, are really needing a huge reconstruction into the major infrastructure. There is a huge need for science and technology and exchange of experiences in doing that. But however, we believe that the science and technology will bring the maximum results only if it's embedded into the policy decisions. The regional environmental reconstruction program had a few pillars. The one pillar was rebuilding the society, working with the civil society organizations, working on the educational sector, working on the strengthening the administration of the countries to shape better in order to absorb and manage the infrastructure reconstruction that was coming in. The REREP, as we call it, in a very short period of time, brought all the countries together. It ended up as a multi-million euro donor platform when those countries which are providing support are jointly programming with the countries which are asking the support. The science and technology transfer was there. Research institutes were providing an input, but again, we were trying to put this input into the policy decisions of the countries. When I see, again, conflicts happening around the world, for me it's kind of a deja vu. Countries not talking to each other, the infrastructure is broken, the administrations of the countries are broken, the overall societies are broken. But however, those countries, they all have the same and the common vision. They would like to end in the peace and stability, and they would like to move forward towards the economic growth. The atrocities which are happening also in the region are also based on conflicts and lack of cooperation on a regional level. However, we believe that having the environment, climate change, energy put on a table as a common vision, as a common platform, we believe that the countries can sit on the same table and also via the environmental protection, via joint natural resources programming, via the joint positions towards rebuilding the region can really have an effect. There was the question also from the gentleman in the back regarding the education and how the education would have a fit in all this. Education is essential, but the education needs to be put into the system. Therefore, on the top of rebuilding the number of schools, the essential part is to build a system for education that would really bring in tangible results. We at the REC, we believe that we are a conflict resolution mechanism. We have programs also in a cooperation with United States agencies, United Nations agencies like UNEC, UNDP, NATO was in, and so on, which was called Environment and Security Initiative. That initiative, again, brought in a huge platform for regional cooperation, but also had a very concrete results in the field. Removal of sludge from the tiling dams, establishment of the educational centers, establishment of the orchid centers, but ultimately the key element was that the countries are sitting together and the countries are leading the process. The international organizations are just supporting and facilitating the work. The examples of the regional environmental reconstruction program, the good example of the Environmental Security Initiative, can really serve as a case study to try to strengthen the regional cooperation, to put the countries on the same table to discuss priorities of their common interest, but also to have the countries leading the process, and the most important, to monitor the process and the results. I would tell you that the World Bank was also part of the program. We managed a number of agencies which were, and the banks, the IFIs, were also part of the program to provide the necessary investments into the infrastructure. Again, I would say, repeat, the program was programmed by the countries, was led by the countries, and that was the key to build a confidence into the region immediately after the conflict. It was not easy, but the end result is to have a really stable region. Nowadays, the countries are negotiating membership into the European Union, and the program evolved in some new instruments which are now focusing on bringing in capacities to the countries to fulfill the requirements of the European Union accession. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mikhail. Just picking up on some of the examples you were alluding to. I mean, what is the thing you are most proud of in terms of what your agency has done, and what effect did that have on the people of the shattered former Yugoslavia? And do you think that has actually created a stronger peace? I mean, can you just give the audience some concrete examples? Environmental control or dams or?
In the immediately after the conflict, we were extremely proud to have all the countries sitting on the same table. That was really an achievement. We are very proud of...
But is that because they had shared goals? I mean, no. Even though politically, ethnically, they were still at odds, but they had shared goals in terms of humanity and lifestyle and living conditions.
You know, that's a region which is really mixed in terms of religion, in terms of traditions, but also one part of the region, they speak the same language. Setting up a program immediately after the conflict is not an easy task. You know, the trust is lost among the countries, but also the trust is lost among the institutions among those countries, and also the societies are broken. So we are particularly proud of providing a platform not only for a dialogue, but also a platform that brought in a huge number of projects which were implemented on a regional level. So what we did is to use the multi-country or multi-beneficiary approach in order to reflect the national priorities. They all knew that they have transboundary environmental problems. They all knew that they need to work together regarding the river balances.
And what did that create?
That created a rebuilded society. That created an evolving regional cooperation process, which is still existing and is still in the memories of the countries. That created transparency of the outcomes from those projects. That created a platform for regional exchanges because they were communicating towards going to the common vision. That created an increased number of investments into the region. That created a number of regional projects. So the majority of those projects were regional and were more than one country involved.
So it unified them politically and then led to more money coming in, and pragmatically led them to seek membership of the EU and other organizations.
You know, in that time, the membership in the EU was not at the table. They had the major common vision is to rebuild their societies and rebuild the infrastructure and to create a long-lasting stability. You know, we didn't necessarily put them in a politically on the same table, but rather use environment as a politically neutral topic. For example, the water treatment plants, water supply, water quality standards, education for sustainable development, air pollution, the civil society organization strengthening. It was a massive exercise, which again was led by them. So it was not led by an international organization, but we rather used the bottom-up approach. And then on the same table, the programming was done. You know, when you have such a conflict, after the conflict will end, there is an enormous presence of donors and supporters which are not necessarily coordinated among themselves. So what we achieved is to have a coordinated donor assistance mechanism where the donors are really providing funding for the needs of the countries. They are using the regional approach to put them on the same table and also to get a better understanding on the outcomes of the programs, but also to have a clear monitoring of the results achieved. We had a task force composed by the countries themselves, but also by the donors. We were the chairs of the initiative, but still the countries are those who were rebuilding their societies. And I really believe that this really worked, and we are particularly proud of this program which we implemented together with the European Commission. Nowadays, the hot topics are the energy security, the climate change, adaptation to climate change, the water scarcity, and the potential conflict might arise from from those issues. And we work on programs which are designed also to increase the number of renewables, to secure the energy, but also, again, without the regional cooperation, that would not be possible to achieve.
That's good. Yeah, a couple of questions. Sir, here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Mohammed Saidam from Royal Scientific Society in Jordan. And my question is regarding the conflict resolution mechanisms, and in particular, how science played into that. And do you imagine, for example, applying the same thing to Syrian and Iraqi scientists who left their country to Western countries, would be enticed to go back and to be part of the reconstruction effort, so that we avoid, like Dr. Dardiri said, of them perhaps working trivial jobs, with all the respects to all jobs. So to what extent have these mechanisms been applied, and how can we learn from them? Thank you.
Yes. You know, the conflicts are rather similar, and they all start with the loss of trust, and also countries trying to protect their national interest. The science and the research played a very important role in bringing in scientific instruments which should be implanted into the policy decisions. It's very difficult to make a policy decision without the support of science and research in all the sectors. The platform itself was designed primarily as a reconstruction effort. When I say reconstruction, that doesn't mean only the physical reconstruction. Physical reconstruction can be done with a huge efforts and huge amount of funds. But however, the reconstruction of the administrations, the reconstruction of the institutions, the reconstruction of the system requires much more efforts, and it takes much longer. The science, the research, the exchange of experiences was essential in order to bring in the technical solutions. But the decision makers were the ones who were putting those research, those solutions into policy decisions. I really believe that the conflict is happening now has a great potential to learn from the examples. You know, the conflict in the former Yugoslavia was quite severe, involved a number of countries, but it's over. So once the conflict is over, the countries, they really need to sit together and really need to cooperate, because they go towards the same vision. They need to have stability, they need to have an economic growth, they need to have scientific solutions, they need to have a good research to put it in their policy decisions.
Okay, I'm just going to stop you there. Is there one more from the floor, or shall we move on? Is anyone raising their hand? No. Okay, Mikhail, sorry, I can't see it. Yeah, have you got the mic? Yeah.
You stated that once the countries and the conflicts are over, they would sit. But what about countries that still have conflicts, such as Syria? The war has been going on for 6 years and nothing has changed. What will happen to these countries? And don't you think we should think of stopping the war before we think of reconstruction?
Yes, you know, before any efforts to be done into reconstruction, the conflict should be either frozen or stopped. But when I'm talking about the reconstruction, I'm thinking on those who are, let's say, the reasons for the conflict to be eliminated. For example, talking something else, working on issues which are a hot priority, which are really important for those people: the clean air, water supply, the energy, are much more important than the conflict itself. So those conflicts, when I'm saying discussion on a regional basis, moving the reasons for the conflict to another topic is very important. At the end, again, the common vision of the countries and the common vision of the people is to have a stability and an economic growth. At some point, the conflict will be over. I haven't seen any conflicts lasting for decades, but
I think many of those hundreds of thousands of people who live in fear of their lives, though,
Yes.
perhaps not be quite so sanguine about that. Thank you very much indeed. Any more questions at the end? Let's move on now to Zainab Salbi. Life story as challenging and interesting as the charity Women for Women International. She set up, what, 25 years ago. Born in Iraq, her father, personal pilot to Saddam Hussein, a man she called uncle, but who terrified her and her family. She learned to live a dual existence that she encapsulated in her book, Between Two Worlds. Once you got married in her early 20s, you went to Bosnia-Herzegovina and Croatia. You set up a charity, a network of sister sponsors. Women from Bangladesh to Canada signed up. The organization became the blueprint for the charity Women for Women International. It's lovely to have you here. I'd love to hear what your views are about rebuilding society, not just through science, but the power that society plays as well.
Thank you, Tim. Well, marhaba everyone. Assalamu alaikum. As Tim said, I grew up in Iraq, and I worked ever since in my career in Bosnia-Herzegovina, in Kosovo, in Rwanda, in Congo, in Afghanistan, Southern Sudan, and many other conflicts, including my home country's Iraq. And recently, a few months ago, I was back to Iraq, and I went to visit my family home that had become an execution center, a brothel, a military base, and now is destroyed. And I drove from my home to the front lines where the fight with ISIS was. It had just finished. So it's about 3 hours drive to Mosul. And every town, every village, every city, every mosque, every school, every university that I passed by for 3 straight hours are destroyed. Just flats. And I think it's easy to talk about conflicts and we forget about the emotional impact it has, that every single memory in your life is destroyed. These were palaces, they were schools, they were thriving societies, and now it is just gone. Now, by the time I entered Mosul, I was just devastated. But then I started meeting with the people of Mosul. And they are saying, and I'm just like conveying their message. It's very simple, actually. They're saying, I met a woman, just let me start with this woman. She said, I will clear up my house and from the rubble and the destructions. I will clean, I will fix the windows, I will fix the door, I will fix the street. I just need help in rebuilding the new human being. That's what the people of Mosul are saying. I'm not exaggerating. Everyone, men and women, children and adults, are comparing themselves to Hiroshima. Except Hiroshima, there was a bomb that was thrown from outside. They're saying our bomb is from within. And so they're saying this revenge, this hatred, this fundamentalism, this sectarian war, Sunni Shia, this whatever is doesn't work. They're basically reporting, I call it a report from the abyss. They're reporting saying, this doesn't work, we tried it, it destroyed us, and we need to build the new human being. And so what does the new human being means? And there are a few things, I've been thinking about it ever since. So I left Mosul rather than devastated, saying, actually, there is, in years, after decades of work in war and conflict areas, I learned every crisis presents an opportunity. And right now, in post-ISIS time, we actually came out of a major crisis, but we have a major opportunity, and we need to take advantage of that. So a few things. You mentioned Marshall Plan and its impacts in rebuilding Japan, Germany, all of that. Well, the equivalent of the Marshall Plan right now is nation building, and that word is a dirty word. that word in America, no, 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 don't say nation building. It's almost like a sin to say nation building. When nation building is investing in countries to help them rebuild their economy and their infrastructure and their societies as a basic way to stabilize and sustain peace. We don't do that anymore. We spend more time, Western news spend more time talking about how ISIS slit the throats of people than talking about how much we actually need to rebuild what they left in destruction. We have spent more time in America spending more time in military spending than actually talking about how we can stabilize societies by building and rebuilding Mosul, Raqqa, different countries, different post-conflict countries. So where do we go from there? A few things. One, I learned in the process from working throughout my career, from Bosnia to Iraq, that when the international community owns the redevelopment process, you don't have a complete redevelopment process and stability. There is a patronizing aspect where a group of international people coming and doing reconstruction and peace, and that doesn't work as well. You have Bosnia and you have Rwanda. And Bosnia, international community tried to rebuild it, or Kosovo for that matter. Still, you do not have stable countries until today. Bosnia is not a stable country. It's always on the fragile of war, on the margins of war. Serbia, Croatia are stable countries, but not Bosnia. But you have Rwanda, where the people of Rwanda owned the rebuilding process, and you actually have it one of the most thriving countries in Africa. After they also have seen the abyss, after bodies, hundreds of thousands of bodies were in the streets of Rwanda in the 1994 genocide. So first thing I learned, we need to own the process of rebuilding. Syrians need to own it, Iraqis need to own it, Arabs need to own it. No one is going to do it for us, and any country. So this is really, and as an Iraqis until today think America is going to help them rebuild the country. It's not going to happen. It is never going to happen. The only way we can rebuild the new human being, one, is to do it for ourselves. And hopefully the international community can join. Hopefully they will see the process and the importance of it, but we cannot count on it, one. Second, we need, as part of the new human being, although these are old values, women are at the heart and center of the rebuilding process. Now, women issues have become very fashionable issues lately. Ever since I started working on this issue, everyone likes to say, women, 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 bring women. We are giving great speeches about women. But let me say something. Still, 10 cents out of every development dollar goes to women. 10 cents investment only out of every dollar that is going to all construction. So for me, it's great to hear the speeches about how wonderful women are and how important women are. But unless we actually put money behind investing in women, we are really just talking the talk but not walking the walk. So we really need actual and tangible investment in women. Now, why do I say that? You can say I'm a women's rights activist, I'm a feminist. There are moral reasons, there are, justice reasons. Yes, but not everyone buys into that. I think actually there is a practical reasons in here. So, and I'm going to use very tangible examples to demonstrate the practical reasons. One is non-corruption, trust, non-corruption. In Afghanistan, the international community created funds for each community, where the fund is managed by the community, a good step, to actually to invest in community activities. And the leadership of the committee were all men. And just as a caveat, I do not believe if women rule the world, it will be a better world. I just don't believe that. The good, the bad, and the ugly is between women and men equally. Is in me, as in you, all of us. But I do believe that more engagement of women and their priorities are different, and more engagement of women is actually a productive thing in society. So when these funds were managed by all community leaders in Afghanistan, they were not dwindling back to the society. When someone by force, some 1/3 of that money to go into women, women have to address practical needs in their families because what they're immediately seeing is their children, and I need to feed them. And so they tend to be less corrupt Maybe because they have less access to power, I don't know, but because also they have immediate needs and they need to deal with that immediate need. So we need to invest in women because of non-corruption issues. Second, trust. Bosnia is a very good example because it's my, you know, they call me honorary citizen of Bosnia. So, you know, trust. A lot of the international community got, you know, did a lot of work on conflict resolution. And in the word of one friend that I met in Bosnia, he says, you know, they think that they put us in a hotel for a weekend and they give us really good food and it's a really nice place and that we will love and forgive each other after the weekend. It doesn't work like this. So we can spend a lot of money in bringing people in hotels and conflict resolutions, but really, at the end of the day, they're going back to their villages and their communities, and it's not working like this. And so what we decided, well not decided, what we you have to do practical solutions. It can't be talking about conflicts in a very theoretical resolutions. It has to be practical. So women in villages that we were working in, that I was working with, where actually there were concentration camps and rape camps and killing and pillaging and all of these things. So they hated each other. Muslims, Croats, and Serbs hated each other. And then we got together and we're like, look, we have this much money and we have to work with all of you. Do you want to work with each other or not? You know, but we're not going to force you. And all the women got together because they have common interests of their children. And so, to my shock, we were not even trying to convince them to work with each other. It's pointless when people are in pain, you know. But we show them practical solutions. And to my shock, the women at the first day when they gathered, all three ethnic division or religious divisions hated each other. A few weeks later, they came together. It's like, okay, we'll collaborate for the sake of our children. So collaboration can happen when there is practical approaches and you're not dealing with their egos, you're really dealing with people's immediate needs. Third, innovations. Talking about science, and science is not my forte, but innovations. You know, a lot of times we're patronizing women. We think they are illiterate, poor victims, all of that, and they are a lot of times in war, indeed, but they also have intelligence and power and strength and resilience. So I'm going to use an example of this country, Jordan. Not a conflict, alhamdulillah. But there is a woman, but it has a lot of Bedouin communities that actually are very poor and they don't have access to electricity and running water and all of that. And I did a story on Rafia. Rafia is a Bedouin woman, illiterate, in a community that does not have electricity, and had a scholarship from Barefoot College. Now, Barefoot College in India believes of teaching women, illiterate mothers or grandmothers, how to put solar panels together. Because they say it's possible to teach anybody how to put solar panels together and bring electricity to their communities, but we are going to teach the grandmothers and the mothers, not the men. Because when the men learn a skill, they go outside of their community and try to get a job somewhere else, and they don't necessarily send all the money. When the woman learns the skills, she's staying at home and, you know, feeding for, caring for the community. So Rafia gets a scholarship to India, learns how to put the solar panels, illiterate. It's only about colors of the wires, blue, red, orange. I don't even know how to put a solar panel together. She puts it, she comes back to Jordan. She actually light her whole community with solar panels. Now, this is innovation. It's not patronizing. It's believing that even though she's illiterate, she can do that. You know, so, and she does. And the community is like, there's a major film about it actually called Solar Mama. And the community is divided between those who are inspired by her, and women are telling her, can you teach us how to do the solar panel so we can light our homes? And between her husband, who gets angry at her and divorces her. So don't underestimate the fourth point. Do not put culture as a way to justify that women cannot move forward. Often international communities saying, no, this is the cause of our culture. Women are stay at home, or this is Jordanian culture. As someone who's Iraqi, who's a Muslim from a culture, that is conservative towards women, don't patronize us. Just, we know how to move forward. Yes, the husband divorced her, but she is there. She's lighting the committee. And when I interviewed her, she said, My most important accomplishment is that my daughters see me lighting all the solar panels in the communities, and they say, I want to be like you, Mama. So when we move forward, especially if you're from an international community going to a culture, do not think, my observation, international communities is almost more conservative than the culture itself. So we have to help them leapfrog it. And the women are leapfrogging it. It is policymakers who are saying, no, we need to respect. So give women some space. And last thing, so make it immediate. I'm worried about Mosul and Raqqa and all of these things that it's been a year almost since their liberation, well, less, and there is no reconstruction process happening. When after a war, people want the immediate to see. We need to prioritize that. Women are the heart and the center, and we need to rebuild the human being. And I just want to leave it one thing. This is what the people of Mosul are saying. So ISIS have a lot of wives, of course, and children and all of that. Iraqi government are taking these wives and the children outside in the camps and separating them from the rest of the society to investigate them and to see. What the people of Mosul are saying, they say, this is wrong. We need to bring these women and their children back to our communities, and we need to raise them, and we need to love them. Because if we continue this separation and this fear, their children will grow up hating us. So the last point I want to say is, as we talk about reconstruction, we, and I will not say it shyly, need to put love at the heart of it. The only way we can move forward is to love each other, actually. As the Mosul people are saying, we need to love even ISIS children and raise them as ours, so they can grow up being part of the new human being and not separate from us. Thank you.
Just a question or two quickly now from the audience. Madam. She's running with the microphone. There you go.
Okay, I'm Hanan Malkawi. I'm from the Royal Scientific Society in Jordan. In fact, your speech, Zainab, is really inspiring. And, you know, it's not because I am a woman, but genetically speaking, subhanallah, women could do multitask professionally. I'm not accusing the men, but I hate the words that every summit I, attend about women, gender, and summit, they're saying empowering women. I mean, God empowered us already. Why should we use this terminology? And, second, it's not related. I wish this Rafi'a's ex-husband, if he married again, you could teach his second wife how to do solar panel, so it'd be a lesson to him.
That would be the biggest revenge. But I mean, there's a saying: we see things as we are. We do not see things as they are. And whenever I enter a room, the first thing I do is I see how many women are in a room, because I'm a woman. A lot of times, the fact that of the matter, and again, honestly, there is the good, the bad, the ugly is in women and men equally. So I do not want to be male bashing. But power at the moment is held primarily by men. Decision making in the world is held primarily by men, and money is held primarily by men. And unless and until men really help, not empowering, but seriously invest in serious investment about women issues. We can, as women, rise up as much as we can. We need the ones in power to invest money, resources, and a true opportunity for voice representation and political representation for the change to happen in reconstructing societies in the whole world.
I'm going to stop there with you, if that's okay. I'm just going to listen to our next speaker, but we'll have some time, 20 minutes or so at the end. So any further questions, please just make a note of them now. So Professor Tateo Arimoto, Director of the Innovation, Science and Technology Program of the Graduate Institute for Policy Studies in Tokyo, comes from a country, as we all know, that has experienced all too many serious experiences of war, devastation, and reconstruction over the past 150 years. Mr. Aramoto is going to talk about the crisis, renewal, and also the prospects for science development and the practice of scientific development in Japan. You're going to need to hold your mic as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much, dear Tim. So this time, yes, as mentioned, the Tim mentioned, I want to show you the Japan's history, based upon the science and technology modernizations. And these 150 years, I show you the three cases. One is case one is the 150 years ago, the Meiji Restoration. We opened the countries and introduced the Western technologies and the university systems. Case two is the 70 years ago, you remember the World War II, and the Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and other big cities in Tokyo, devastated, destroyed by bombing. And third case is the 7 years ago, we faced the big historic earthquake, tsunami, and Fukushima nuclear disasters. Okay, sorry.
There's a slight delay. It's come through.
Yeah.
I think you're there now.
Okay.
Yep.
So case one is the 150 years ago. As I mentioned, this revolution is caused the civil war across Japan and destroyed the social infrastructures and education networks. That the new government, political leaders, as well as the general public, recognize the importance of education and science and technology. Why? Because you may remember at that time China colonized by the Western countries, then Japan facing the colonization. Therefore, new government and taking the top priority is increasing wealth and military power, as well as the promotion of the industry based upon the science and technology base, as well as education. And it's very happy for us, the political leaders, normally short-sighted, but at that time, most of the political leaders had a chance to visit Western countries, and they had a chance to visit university and industry, the factories, and the farmers, and therefore their decision is the continuous support to such science and technology and education. So next, please. Next slide. Next slide. So time is limited. So again, I stress the education-oriented policy and the science and technology-based policy. Since that time, almost 150 years, Japanese national policy, as well as the general public awareness, is building consensus to continuous support of education and science. And next slide, please. So the case two is just after the World War II. As I mentioned, our land is devastated, destroyed. How to rebuild our ways and means of living, ways as well as the industrial base. So again, World War II, Japan defeated. Why? Because this time again, not only the political leaders, but also the general public aware the need to rebuild science and technology and education. And another important point is during the war, many promising scientists and engineers isolated from the civil activities just within the military vessel building and the weapon building, etc. But those kind of scientists and the engineers moved from the military sector to the civil sectors, including automobile industries, electronic industries, etc., etc. That movement is the stimulate the Japan's rebuilding as well as the building the advanced technology countries in the future. Oh, next slide. Okay, so at that time the team mentioned we have a lot of the help from the international schemes, Marshall Plan, as well as the World Bank, so in order to build up the industrial base. Okay, next. So after the 15 years after that start of the reconstruction, again we faced the serious difficulty. At that time, it's very happy. The economic growth is very high, around 10% annual rate in terms of GDP. But in parallel, we face everywhere in Japan, not only the industrial area, but also the urban area, metropolitan areas, the contaminations, air emissions, and the water and land, as well as the waste. So again, the government and industry, as well as university, agreed, get consensus to reform our industrial activities as well as the social ways to reform to overcome by combinations of the technological development, environmental technologies, etc., as well as the social innovation. I mean the social innovation, particularly the regulation, national and local government regulation is very impact such kind of idea. Okay, next please. So finally, the case 3 is 7 years ago, the big earthquake and tsunami and the Fukushima accident. Next slide, please. So it's busy, but I show you this is the first time Fukushima accident during the 150 years ago. Even the general public has been a supporter to the science and technology. But this time, science and technology community in general lost trust among the general public, including, of course, the political. Why? Because those science communities within government and outside government couldn't take the appropriate actions and advice to the political leaders and the living peoples in Fukushima. So next slide. So how to rebuild such devastating trust? Still, we continue such. Okay, next slide, please. So at first, the right-hand side, and I show you one example is at that time the big earthquake happened. 27 bullet train systems, Shinkansen, running at the high speed around 300 kilometers per hour around that impacted area. But it's very, very happy that could stop without any accident. Why? Because using the pre-installed earthquake detection and automatic stopping. Okay, so next slide, please. So another important point is how to rebuild the local industries, fisheries, agriculture, and rebuild the comfortable housing, and also rebuild the cultural properties. So at that time, you mentioned the network is important to the accumulated engineering and knowledge from across Japan to address rebuild that impacted area. Okay, final one. Next slide. Okay. In conclusion, I pick up the 7 points about science, technology, and education for rebuilding broken societies. First one is important, education, people. And second one is institutions for STI and education systems. But institutional system, we need redesign that system to adjust the changing needs and the changing world. Okay. Third point is the consensus building. For particularly the consensus building is continuous support to the science and technology and in education. Fourth one is the sharing. Yeah, you mentioned the sharing experience, knowledge, and technologies across Japan, also the beyond the boundaries. And 5 point is the evidence-based policy making, and also the we need developing the robust science advice systems with trust among the political leaders and the general public and the science communities. Sixth one is the customization and commonization. It's a curious word, but normally the knowledge and the technology should be customized to the address the local needs and local problems, but they should be transferred to other areas, different contexts. So we need commonize or generalize such. Okay, final one is international collaboration is very, very important. Yes, you mentioned not only the government international collaboration, but also women and the young researchers. Those kind of the networks now the expanding with trust is important. Okay, finally my final word is the science. No, science and education for peace is the very good and the golden gift humans in the 21st centuries, SDG, of course. And also that concept, SDG, giving us the global science community and national science community to reform our STI and education systems. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah,
thank you very much, Tito. We've got a session actually in about half an hour's time on the Sustainable Development Goals for those of you who are interested. We've got 12 minutes left. I'm being told I've got to keep precisely to time. Should we just open this to the floor? I mean, what struck me is it's about trust, it's about education, it's about training the young, it's about trust in government, transparency, all these issues that we know about. So, what would you like to ask? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you first. Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Haidar Frehat. I'm the Director of Technology for Development at the United Nations ESCWA in Beirut. I could see from this great panel that development is either homegrown or it's coming from the outside. Destruction is either home-inflicted or is coming from the outside. Looking at Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Bosnia, Lebanon, several other places, I could see that there is cannibalism. Destruction is coming from within, from inside, where development, artificial development, and artificial development promises is coming from the outside. This is my diagnosis. Now, my question to the honorable panelists is, how can STI, Science, Technology, and Innovation, reverse this inverted triangle, pyramid, where we deploy technology, science, and innovation in order to put some sense and grow the thing from within,
okay,
like national communities?
That's a great question. Abdullah, can I start with you?
I would like to emphasize the point that the international community's role is extremely important, but rebuilding this part of the world will be done by the people of this part of the world. The damage in the region is estimated at about $1 trillion. There is no donor money on earth that's going to be enough to rebuild our societies. So, and as we said, this is a societal transformation. This is not just rebuilding of some physical structures. And that societal transformation cannot be imposed from abroad. It has to emerge from below. Now, what can we do to empower our young men and women to be able to create that space and generate that new productivity is the freedom to utilize technology, the access to technology, access to knowledge, the lower cost and lower regulatory obstacles to the access to technology and the production of technology. Without that, you remember, Dr. Freyhat, on the project on Jordan 2030, we found out that there are, with all the possibilities of reforms, from governance to all the economic sectors, the opportunities, the alternative growth trajectories for Jordan remain limited without a dramatic change in the technological components in the Jordanian economy.
Abdullah, I'm going to stop you there. Just a quick response from Tato. I just wonder, were you thinking in terms of technology about, for example, blockchain, this idea that people now can actually create their own networks, they don't need to go, was that?
Yes, your question is very important. Okay. These years, the Japanese science and technology community collaborated with the developing countries, particularly Asia, Thailand, etc. One example is the prediction system of the flood or the earthquake or the landslide. Those, based upon those experiences, we need combinations, not only the advanced countries and advanced technology, but also the local experience. Local knowledge is very, very important to adjust address the local needs and local problems. So that is normally the science community is the first priority, the generalized, producing generalized knowledge. But I stress again, customized is important.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you. Sir.
My name is Murenzi, the director of TWAS, the World Academy of Sciences. But also I was Rwandan Minister of Education from 2001 to 6 and Science Minister for 1 to 9. Yes, education is very central. So what happened after the genocide in 1994, actually the country decided to base everything on knowledge, in particular education. So the education system became very important in transferring knowledge and in particular peace education. So when I was minister, we made sure that in the curriculum, when we are teaching children about language, like French or English or some other things, you put issues related to peace. When you are doing a grammar and doing that, to make sure that in that you put peace-related issues. And that helps the brain of the children when the child is growing. So critical thinking is very, very central. What happened during the genocide, they will tell you, go and kill your neighbor. And you kill your neighbor. Why should I go and kill my neighbor? Why should I go and blow myself? Why should you tell a kid who's 5 years old, 7 years old, 10 years old, to go and blow herself or himself? So in the classroom, what's happening throughout the country, throughout the region, here and elsewhere? So education is very, very central. So if a country wants to come out, of course there is a way. Through education, you can do that. Because if you start now, for example, in the next 20 years, all these children who are between now 5 and 10 will be becoming the adults of tomorrow. So education, critical thinking is very central.
Thank you, sir. That's a very, very important intervention. The man just behind you there with the blue shirt.
Hello, I'm Mustafa Jazzar from Lebanon. So thank you for your talk about Iraq. It's a very beautiful experience. Let me share with you in 2 seconds the Lebanese experience. So the civil wars just stopped in 91 without any reconsideration of what happened, and we still hate each other till now. So I'm afraid and I hope that sometime in Iraq, the idea of ISIS will be reconsidered in order to understand what happened, in order to prevent this also.
Tim, may I take this? Yeah. Well, I want to comment about a few things, actually. Yes, I agree. We don't process, I think. We just rush from one step and another. And how does a society step back and process what happened? And how do we own what's ours and what's not ours in order to evolve? I think, so a couple of things. I think what impressed me about the story of Rwanda, beyond the education, is that the government owned, or the people or the government owned the process of engagement with the international community. They had a very clear national plan to rebuild it. They had a very clear communication. As an NGO, they would tell us, if we want to see your mission, and if it doesn't fit with our national plan to rebuild, then you need to go out.
And the return of the Hutus, of course, a year later, 2 years later, you know, 1 million people coming across from the border.
Exactly. So they they owned the reconstruction process, basically, and that is a very, very big, important lesson. They did not. I mean, my heart breaks because Iraqis are just still thinking someone else is going to save us to rebuild, and it's just not going to happen unless we do it for ourselves. So Rwanda, they really did it, and they regulated, and there was a plans for the people. The day of the people, everyone went and cleaned the streets. The day of this, everyone went and did, I mean, there was a very, very strategic initiatives. And I want to comment about the technology and how, I think because the discrepancy in the world is so massive between, I mean, people in the US are talking about, you know, technology that is like out of this world. And then we come in here and we have, you know, different, not comparable, let's say, you know, in terms of our innovation. So we always want that, and I think it's okay that we actually encourage our kids with their not mediocre, very good, but not comparable perhaps to international standards. I think we are always aspiring to go there, and we forget that we need to start with the basics. And that if we start with the basics, you never know what the solutions are. You know,
I'm just going to stop you here. Last question. Just in the spirit of what Zainab was talking about, is there any question from a woman in the... we've heard from you, sir. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I was actually just looking for a woman. Is there a lady who'd like to ask a question? No. Okay.
Sari Hanafi from American University of Beirut. I have a question to Dr. Abdullah Dardari. Well, in your talk, I would say you put emphasis on legitimacy of reconstruction. You put it on expertise, science, sharing knowledge, but there is another legitimacy, which is representation. And I'm glad that you connect reconstruction with the new contract and reconstructing social network, but I would like your comment.
Just in a sentence, because we've only got a minute left.
I will finish. That I'm worried that reconstruction process historically in the region carry with it elite formations, and who pay for reconstruction will bring the new elite.
Okay,
because of the lack of
Abdullah, you've got 90 seconds.
An answer to Dr. Hanafi and Dr. Jazzar, there is no reconstruction without addressing the root causes of conflicts, and there is no reconstruction without the peoples agreeing among themselves on a new social contract. If we are going to let the old elites and the cronies who captured the institutions and the economies of the pre-conflict to be the same who will capture the reconstruction of post-conflict, will be still facing a new relapse to conflict very soon.
Okay, Abdullah, Mikhail, Zainab, and Tadeo, thank you all very much indeed. I mean, it's been a fascinating discussion. I hope you've enjoyed it. I think there are signs of optimism. I think we all recognize just how challenging the issues and problems are, but actually that science is now more than ever playing a very important part in reconstruction and recovery. I've got a countdown clock in front of me now. When I'm on air, if I go over, I get, well, threatened with a sack and the adverts start. So I'd just like to thank you all very much indeed. Hope to see you at another session in about 25 minutes' time. And of course, for the closing ceremony in this hall, and that starts at 4:30 with Prince Hassan and Princess Sumaya, among others. Thank you all very much indeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, science journalists, members of the media and public information officers, the official press point hosted by World Science Forum presidents Her Royal Highness Princess Sumaya and President Hungarian Academy of Science Laszlo Lovasz and Flavia Schlegel, Assistant Director General for Natural Sciences, UNESCO, discussing the 2017 World Science Forum Declaration, will take place at 11:30 in the press briefing room located on the second floor. السادة الكرام، انتهت الجلسة. ستبدأ الجلسة الثانية